How the heck do you stay on top of content ideas for your podcast? That is one of the most common worries that I find podcasters tend to have when they run something like a solo show. And it's very, very often the very fact that pushes people to continuing to do an interview show when perhaps actually they're ready to step out of that into something for themselves. And that's what I'm going to talk about right here on the Podcast Accelerator, the thrice-weekly show that brings you podcast education, industry insights, and straight-talking reactions to podcasting news. I'm your host, Mark Asquith, that British podcast guy and CEO and co-founder here at Rebel Base Media. We were out at Podcast Movement last week in Orlando. We're still in Orlando with the team, doing some work out here, enjoying a little bit of the sunshine, and generally just kind of following it with people on the back of our Captivate.fm beta sign-up phase. We're in soft launch phase for that. We've got people using Captivate, and I want to thank everyone that came and got a personal demo, thank everyone that signed up, and obviously thank everyone that took one of our t-shirts. We got rid of about 700 t-shirts this year, which was insane. We just gave them away, so thank you. Give us a little tweet if you've got one at Rebel Base Media. Let us know where you're wearing your Rebel Base Media 2019 t-shirt. And if you're curious about Captivate, go and check it out at Captivate.fm. It's an amazing podcast host, analytics, and marketing platform. Now, I run a 3 times per week show in a really, really tight niche of podcasting. This is a podcasting show. And people wonder how the heck I keep up with ideas without being an interview show. Well, I'm going to talk to you about that in about 10 seconds' time. But I want to give a quick holler out to my team at AWeber who were out there in Orlando with us. We ran a meetup with them last week. And I just want to remind you that if you aren't email marketing for your podcast, then you are leaving money on the table. And I do use AWeber. They are fantastic. They look after me. They've got my back and they help me to build relationships with you. So go check AWeber out at markasquith.com/AWeber. It's going to get you 90 days for free. So 3 times a week, I'm on a solo show. I'm in a very, very tight niche. You know, podcasting, ultimately, there's only so much that you can talk about in podcasting. Or is there? People do tend to wonder how I keep on top of the ideas, how I keep the ideas flowing without being an interview show. And it's something that I know my good friend Evo, so one of the Captivate.fm advisory board, Evo Terra, one of the forefathers of podcasting, actually wrote the book on Podcasting for Dummies. He's got the same issue. You know, he's a 3 times per week show with podcast pontifications. And you'd think that it would be difficult. Now, the reason that I wanted to do this show is that every single time I come back from Podcast Movement, I'm just completely overwhelmed by the number of people copying other people's show formats. So what I mean by this is that everyone wants to be XYZ on fire. Everyone wants to be the next Pat Flynn. Everyone wants to be the next Chris Ducker. Pat, Chris, John, anyone else that runs an interview show, they are great at that. John in particular pioneered that daily interview format. You know, he did. He did a great, great job of it. Great guy, good friend, but you don't need to copy him, all right? Yes, you can maybe run an interview show, but that is not going to get you the same level of success that John has achieved. John has achieved that through sheer persistence, determination, being there, recording every single day and building a network through those interviews, all right? You can't do that. You can't just copy that, all right? So you have to stay on top of content and you have to put yourself right at the front of your content and at the front of your show, all right? So the way that I do this is that I tend to break my content types down into certain different buckets, different tranches of content. So for me, I've generally got podcast education as one thing. I've got podcast opinions as another thing. Reactions to podcasting news, and then kind of bonusy episodes that sit on top of all of those. You know, like say if WWDC, Apple, when they announced Apple Podcasts versus iTunes, I did a bonus episode. So that was kind of like a reaction to the news. And it says that in the beginning of my episode. Welcome to the Podcast Accelerator, the thrice-weekly show that brings you podcast education, 1, industry insights, 2, and straight-talking reactions to podcasting news, 3. So I run a spreadsheet on Google Spreadsheets. I'm looking at it right now. I've got highlighted on that sheet, episode 48, 19 to the 8th, 2019. It's called Never Run Out of Podcast Ideas Again, and I've got my description there. Every single time I have an idea, I add it to this sheet. Every time. Every single time. So I might be walking through a bar and an idea pop into my head. Fire my phone up, stick it on the sheet. But The other thing that you've got to consider is that a really great way to run on top of this is to find out what other people in your industry are talking about. So, I'm talking about podcasting here. You might be in the niche, and this is a big shout out to Joe, who's over here in the UK with an award-winning podcast around the knitting industry. Joe's in the knitting industry. What does she do to keep on top of content? Well, if I was Joe, I would be taking a look at some of the Facebook groups and looking at actually what questions are people asking. How can I answer them on a podcast? I'd be looking at even some of the books in my industry and looking to give my opinion on some of the topics that they cover. Look at the inside of a book. You can do that kind of, what's it called on Amazon where you look inside? It actually might just be called Look Inside. I'm a fool. I'm pretty sure it is just called Look Inside. And you quite literally just have a look inside and look at some of the questions that book is asking, look at some of the opinions that it is positing, and then you dive in there and give your own take on it. You definitely do not copy, you shouldn't plagiarize, but you can add opinions and structure to different things because people tune in to your show for your opinions, all right? So, another thing that you can do, and one thing that I do a heck of a lot of, is that, look, we are supporting a lot of podcasters through Podcast Success Academy, where we've got thousands of members, where we are in Captivate.fm, where we've got piles and piles of podcasters sending us support requests, asking questions and opinions. We've got podcast websites where we get tens of thousands of support requests, just asking bits about podcasting every single day. Take those. Take the questions that you get asked about your niche. Because if you are in your niche and if you're podcasting, you are seen as the expert, ergo you're going to get questions asked of you. Don't just let them pass. Don't let them be transient. Let them run and just get captured on this spreadsheet, all right? It's super simple, super easy. And I know you think, okay, Marco, look, this is pretty obvious. I could have kind of guessed this for myself. Well, fair enough. You probably could have. But the fact of the matter is getting into a content collection mindset, all right? That's the whole crux of this episode, is not the processors. It's not the recording it on the sheets. It's the main crux of it is getting into a content collection mindset where you are openly and abundantly seeking out content ideas, and everything that you come across every day is approached through that lens, where you take that and you say, actually, could I make a piece of content about this? Could I make a piece of content about it? And then you go ahead and you repurpose it. And of course, you've got amazing people like Amy Woods. Go and check Amy's new book out, by the way, Content 10X, the book. Go and check it out, content10x.com. Highly recommend that if you're thinking about starting to repurpose content. It's something that I do a lot of. But get into a content collection mindset, all right? That is the takeaway that I want you to take from this, a content collection mindset. Now, thank you so much for joining me here on the Podcast Accelerator. Remember to tell your friends that the show is available to listen to for free in any app that supports podcasts. And look, go and put 5 minutes into your own podcast growth. Maybe you're just wondering what's stopping you from growing. Why can't you get to that 100 downloads per episode? Why can't you get to that 500 downloads per episode? Well, go and check out. We have a very special annual event that we are launching at the end of this month. It's part of the Captivate.fm launch plan, the launch event, which is called Ready, Set, Grow. We're going to be running this every single year. This year, the last week in August, we've got the inaugural Ready, Set, Grow event. The only way to sign up for a ticket to that is to be on the Captivate.fm pre-launch notification list. They're the only people, as well as podcast websites, paying members, that will get invitations to this online summit. So go and check out Captivate.fm right now. And then after August, we're going to be back to giving you more insights via our Rebel-based media website, the Podcast Rebellion, some of the big 4 challenges that are holding you back. We're going to get back to that in September. But for now, you need to be on that Captivate FM pre-launch early notification list to get access to Ready, Set, Grow, the world's only growth-oriented podcast summit. Go and check that out. And until next time, don't forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.